Being live streamed. Sweet. I think we are all good to go here. What live streamed? What is going on, you beautiful people? Move this over slightly. All right. It is a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. Living the dream here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It's finally summer. Well, yeah, actually summer. It's like plus 30 degrees today, which is awesome. So we'll chill for a couple of minutes and then, yeah, we'll see what's getting on. Today we're talking about compounded semaglutide or compounded Ozempic, Wegovy, and all the others and stuff like that. I haven't done a specific topic on this quite yet. I've got some content, but I need to quit opening businesses and then I would be able to make all the content in the world. Sweet. All right, we are gonna get on a rolling here. So welcome back to the program. If you haven't been here before, my name is Dr. Dan. I'm a pharmacist turned obesity expert. I've been essentially living and breathing obesity medicine and practice for the last 5 or 6 years, 2017, something like that. And I've been kind of doing the whole social media thing all on the side to hopefully provide some education and knowledge and help people out. We were doing the lives like every week, but now that it's summer and everybody should get outside and enjoy the beautiful weather, including me, we're going to kind of do it every month, and then we'll see how things are looking for September and go from there. So this will be for today, where we're going to talk about compounded semaglutide, Saxenda, and all of those guys. And what are the risks, the benefits, if there is any, and that sort of thing. And then next month, we will be back for another live, and we'll kind of take her from there. So let's dish on it. And to quickly answer Cindy's question, yes, you can definitely go ahead and ask questions. I won't be answering any questions until after my little spiel here for like 10 minutes or so, but feel free to ask your questions, and yeah, we can kind of dive into it afterwards and whatnot. So let's give you guys the rundown on the compounded semaglutide and various Saxenda and stuff like that. So overall, this kind of aspect of things, while the compounded agents were coming out, largely because there was a massive shortage of Wegovy, Mounjaro, Ozempic. Essentially, Ozempic and Wegovy, Ozempic's been out for a while, and then Wegovy kind of made its debut. And then a whole bunch of Hollywood people, including Elon Musk and Elon Musk's dog, I'm sure, and everybody else in between, jumped on the medication. Everyone was using it for weight management and weight loss. And that essentially caused droves and droves of people wanting to get on it, and caused a shortage of Ozempic, Wegovy, and then ultimately Mounjaro, which is made by another company. Now, these compounded medications, there is like a small little clause, I guess you could say, in terms of compounding medications only in the United States, where if a medication becomes shorted, there is maybe a case that could be made where a medication could be compounded in order to make up for that lack of medication on the market. This situation is a little bit different and is very much a gray area, and that's part of the reason why I think it's taken so long to kind of catch up with it and such. And the reason for that is because technically Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro, those are all brand name medications. They haven't come off patent. And so we'll usually see compounded medications and stuff like that come to market or to be used when it's like a generic molecule or what have you. And for whatever reason, the company that makes the generic molecule of a drug isn't able to supply the drug, or maybe there was some kind of like with metformin, there was an additional agent that was found in the quality control process, and that ultimately led to them all being put on or pulled from the market. They were put on back ordered, so then compounding pharmacies could step in if they had the ingredient metformin and custom compound it for people and whatnot like that. And so all of these custom compounding pharmacies popped up. They were, and I guess these clinics were working in conjunction with them in order to try and get this drug, or get semaglutide, Saxenda, Ozempic, and that sort of thing in the compounded formulation and out to people. The other big reason why they did come out as well is because Ozempic and Wegovy and such like that are like ridiculously expensive in the States. Like I think quite possibly the most expensive versions of it anywhere in the world, because the states have very, very poor regulation over pharmaceutical companies and their pricing and stuff like that. Whereas just about every other developed country in the world has some kind of board or regulatory parameters that need to be followed in order for a medication to be covered and brought to market in that given country. So not only was it shorted, but also because of the cost aspect. Now, the other big problem that was happening with the compounded medications is the drug companies like Novo Nordisk, which makes Ozempic and Wegovy, never actually released like the molecule semaglutide, the formula or anything like that, to the compounding pharmaceutical companies or anything like that. So they never released that. So the compounding pharmacies, from what we can tell, was obtaining these research-based salts, essentially. So they were semaglutide, but they had different salt components and excipients and all that sort of things were kind of added to it. And they were actually what we call research grade. So they weren't actually meant for human use in any kind of way, or they're not meant for human use. They're meant for research grade, and there's even questions as to whether they could be even used in animals and stuff like that in animal research. So we have these molecules that in theory are the molecule, but they have a different formulation. They have different standards and regulations that they undergo in their production and stuff like that. And we ultimately have no idea, A, how effective they are, if they last or act differently in the body, how they're cleared from the body, if the salt formation has any kind of difference in what the drug ultimately does. And yeah, basically if there is no evidence as to these salts being used in humans and stuff. So a lot of really, really big problems. And essentially what was kind of happening is, or I guess still is happening, is that, some individuals kind of saw an opportunity, saw a gray area in terms of the legislation in the States, decided to start compounding and got these research grade chemicals, which may or may not be as good or effective. We have no idea. We have no data, and started compounding it and selling it dirt cheap to people who ultimately want to get on the drug, either because they couldn't access it because of shortages, or they couldn't afford it because their insurance didn't cover it and they didn't want to pay out of pocket, or what have you. So my general recommendation around the compounded molecules has been to stay away. I 100% understand that, yeah, it is fucked up how expensive drugs are in the States. And that really, really sucks. And it is an accessibility issue, but I certainly wouldn't recommend any of my patients taking that risk. I myself wouldn't take that risk with a potential research grade pharmaceutical. Yes, compounding pharmacies, go some rigorous standards and stuff in terms of compounding, but a lot of them have been found to have all kinds of issues, and there's been all kinds of deaths and errors and that sort of thing that have ultimately happened with these medications that get compounded, not with the GLP-1 medications, but medications in the past. There's been fungus that have been mixed in and various things like that, where a lot of people have ultimately died because of errors that are happening within that compounding pharmacy lab. So overall, the safety, I wouldn't trust it. The effectiveness, I mean, people seem to be having some kind of effect with it. However, we don't know if it's lasting as long, what exactly is happening and that sort of thing. So a lot of big questions around that. And then what's starting to happen now is that Wegovy, Ozempic, and Mounjaro all of the drug shortages are being corrected, and now all of these kind of clinics and compounding pharmacies are all going to be really starting to dry up because they are now losing the legal liability to even compound these drugs because the brand name drug or the drug itself is no longer shorted. So these clinics are all going to suddenly dry up. People are going to be left without medication and right back to square one. So now they're going to get care withdrawn for them. That might lead to them gaining weight or regaining the weight, having other complications. And we also don't know what the long-term effects of using those medications are going to be like. Again, they're research grade. They're not exactly the same salts. They could act differently, affect the receptors differently. The laundry list of unknowns is just way, way, way too long. And ultimately, there's a lot of questionabilities around the drug itself. And yeah, I wouldn't trust it. I don't recommend it to anybody. And I would just continue to advocate to your drug companies, and more importantly, advocate to your government and congressmen and all that kind of stuff, and get them to actually do something about drug prices and that sort of thing, because they're freaking out of control in the States. So that would be kind of some of my recommendations around that and the compounded semaglutide and other GLP-1s. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown on them. Definitely some safety stuff. And like I said, we're probably going to start seeing them dry up now. And I know Novo Nordisk and the other companies, they've got like a bazillion lawsuits ongoing right now against all these compounding pharmacies. And somebody's going to be paying a lot of money, but we won't know the results of any of that for 5 years, maybe, depending how long the court system takes to get through it all. So yeah, that's kind of that dealio there. So we will take some questions or elaborate on other things. And yeah, kind of dive into things. Looks like people got a few questions, so let's give her. So from TikTok first. Trixia, my insurance has been denying Saxenda, which I was on, and have been wanting info on the compounder. All right, well, hopefully this kind of gave you a little bit of info. Like I said, I don't recommend the compounded formulations at all. Way too many unknowns. And yeah, they're mixing it with things, and it's has a snake oil salesman-y feel to it, if you will. If you look at the sites that are selling it and promoting it, there's a lot of other garbage and crap that they're kind of pushing and whatnot. So yeah, I just recommend avoiding it. It's down a path that basically they're trying to take advantage of desperate people, and they definitely are. Someone is making a lot of money somewhere. Crystal, good evening. Good evening to you, Crystal. Over on the YouTube, Cindy, Karen, greetings from Gainesville, Virginia. Awesome. Greetings. We're up here in Calgary, Alberta. I'm sure you guys are just as hot as we are right now. Cindy, I will go ahead and ask your take on a specific situation. I have arrhythmia issues, and I've heard Ozempic had possible cardiac effects of racing heart and palpitations. Cindy, possible cardiac side effects of Ozempic. So what are the possible cardiac side effects? I heard can cause racing heart and palpitations. I deal with arrhythmia issues already, but I also need to get type 2 diabetes under control. Should I still try it? So can Ozempic and the other GLP-1 medications cause cardiac issues, in particular if you already have underlying cardiac problems, particularly with arrhythmias, or basically your heart beats irregularly? So good question. The short answer is that yes, I mean, not so much cardiac issues. So very rarely, some people do report that they get palpitations, sometimes with Ozempic, Saxenda, and the others. However, it really hasn't been teased out into the literature. And is it like, it's not AFib that it's suddenly causing, it's not causing any specific kind of arrhythmia, but people do report maybe like a racing heart. What we do know these drugs do is they can actually increase your heart rate. But for 99% of people, it's like maybe a beat or two extra. And the way that it kind of does that is it's thought that it acts on what's called our vagus nerve, essentially. So our vagus nerve plays a large role in terms of fight or flight response, kind of the rest and digest response and that sort of thing. And so the activation of that response and the GLP-1 is thought to kind of block the rest and digest, so the calming of the system. And so it blocks it a little bit. And what that ultimately means is that the heart rate doesn't get decreased as much. And so the heart rate can increase slightly. For some people, it's 1 or 2 beats a minute. Other people, it might be a little bit more, where it's suddenly feeling like a racing heart. If you do have an underlying arrhythmia, maybe you might be more prone to it, but ultimately I've had plenty of patients that have, AFib or other arrhythmia type issues, and they've had no problems or concerns with it. In fact, we might even look at potentially still or be more in favor of using a GLP-1 receptor agonist because we have really good evidence that they help protect the heart. And so if you have arrhythmias and stuff, there might be something there of we're actually going to get more benefit, or at least it's worth it to try it, see what happens. If it does, increase your heart rate or cause some palpitations or something, then we can stop it, get you off of it, and then we would know that it's obviously not working for you. So for the most part, it's cardioprotective and has that benefit, but certainly with some people, it might cause more of a higher heartbeats. But for most people, it's maybe an extra beat or two per minute kind of thing. So hope that helps. And Cindy also said, hi from Los Angeles. Hi, hello, Los Angeles. I'm lucky and I only pay a $25 copayment. Yeah, that is some people who have the insurance cover and some stuff like that. Yeah, it's good that you have that. That's awesome. It definitely, the drugs are so expensive, especially in the States and here in Canada as well. Like here in Canada, 1 month of Ozempic at say 1 milligram once per week, one pen is about 230. I guess it's like 240 to 200, depending on where you're filling it, how they're getting it, all those sorts of things. So yeah, it is still even expensive up here. Jenny, after 1.5 years, my insurance is stopping coverage of Saxenda. I'm so sad and scared of weight gain. And that is one of the really unfortunate parts of the insurance companies is they're looking at these drugs as a short-term fix, kind of like, any diet that people go on. It's like this idea of, well, if you go on it, then you're going to stop it eventually, and then you're good to go, and you can just go back to normal life. But clearly that's not the case. What we know is that whatever you do to lose the weight, you've got to continue doing it to keep the weight off. Same thing with these medications. There's good evidence to show that for a vast majority of people, when they come off of these drugs, they ultimately gain the weight back, largely because, they go back to old eating patterns and habits. Either A, they didn't make sustainable changes while they were on the medication, or B, that suppression of the biological drive is no longer there. So it becomes more challenging to make mindful choices and decisions. For most people that I work with, if that's kind of a situation that's coming up, we really look at stabilizing in their weight. We calculate out their predicted maintenance level of calories at their current age, height, and weight and activity level. That's also called your total daily energy expenditure. So you calculate that. There's tons of calculators online, TDEE. You can go to my website, healthevolve.co. I've got a calculator there, and you put in maintain weight, and it'll tell you how many calories to eat. So we'll bring their calories up to their maintenance level, hold them there, and looking at optimizing all the other things like activity, doing resistance training, sleep, stress management, all those sorts of things, and then try to slowly come off or start decreasing the dose. And I've had some people who have been very successful in coming off. It is definitely hard and challenging. It's not impossible, but it really is quite hard. And so just kind of working with the healthcare professionals that you have your hands on or have access to, and just getting their support to kind of go through that. Sarah, what is your opinion on L-carnitine? basically it's a waste of money. And there's like very, very limited evidence that it might help with some amount of weight loss, but the amount is very minuscule for the cost of it and the potential benefit. Like it's just not worth it. You're better to spend the money that you'd spend on that supplement on like good quality whole foods, better proteins, and that sort of thing, because that's ultimately going to be better and more effective for you. Julie Thompson, no wonder it doesn't seem to work. I didn't know it was compounded. Yeah, so it depends. Like if you're getting it from like some clinic that says it's, oh, we have our special semaglutide or liraglutide or tirzepatide injections or whatever, and they're like drawing it up out of a vial versus it coming out of like the legit pen that says Mounjaro or what have you, then yeah, you're getting a compounded product. And yeah, it very well may not work. And they tend to add other things to it that ultimately may inactivate the drug and stuff. So the health clinic, so this is from L. Hamilton, the health clinic that sells MIC B12 skinny shot is now selling semaglutide plus MIC B12, a combination injection. Is that overkill? I mean, it's not overkill. They're just trying to add crap in to say that it's going to be more effective / also circumvent the compounding laws and stuff like that in the States. So that's the other tactic that they'll use, is they'll sometimes add B6, B12, or whatever else. But yeah, it's not really overkill, because the other two things, they have no evidence to show that they actually help with weight management or weight loss in any kind of way. So it's not overkill. It's just more of the same kind of garbage. And yeah, I recommend just safety and save your money and see if you can get the actual drug. So Crystal on TikTok, I've been on Saxenda for almost 2 years, but I still struggle with binge eating. I started Contrave last week. It is helping. I take both. Is that a problem? So it's not a problem. Like there's no drug interactions. And as long as you don't have like any of the health contraindications, so you're not on opioids for the Contrave, you don't have a seizure disorder, and there's a couple other ones that I'm drawing a blank on right now. But if you don't have any of those things, like, yeah, they're not a problem to take both of them together. Generally with binge eating, I mean, what I find, and it's not really documented in the literature, there's kind of two types of binge eating disorder. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is very emotional, psychological based, and this one tends to happen at like any time of the day. So an individual, when it will engage in a binge after, say, they went into work in the morning, boss yelled at them for some kind of reason, they then go and have a binge on their coffee break or something like that. And then same thing, it could happen later in the day or at a different point, but it's very much tied to an emotional type reaction, and the binge is to kind of like self-soothe. On the flip side, type 2 is more driven by someone who eats very little through the day, whether they skip breakfast or very small breakfast, very little lunch. They aren't hungry, or they don't feel hungry through the day. They feel in control through the day because they have more cognitive capacity, more ability to be mindfulness and stuff. And then as the day goes on and they get into the evening, they're tired. Their brain power has gone down. Their brain's kind of shutting off for the night and getting ready to relax. And they haven't eaten anything all day. So they've been restraining against all the biology. And then the biology at nighttime finally gets a chance to bounce back because they no longer have the ability to restrain. And ultimately they engage in a binge later in the evening. And so in this situation, it's kind of secondary to the fact that they just haven't eaten all day or properly nourished their body through the day. And so biology is bouncing back and getting them to overeat and overconsume. And yeah, they ultimately get a binge at that point. So that's kind of the one component and aspect there of the type 2 binge eating, I guess you could say. For both of them, the first place that I always start is looking at correcting the daily patterns. So it's best to kind of load most of your calories and get lots of protein with breakfast, with lunch, and then maybe kind of taper off as the day goes on, but trying to get more of the food that you're going to eat in the day earlier in the day can ultimately curb that overall binging pattern. And just eating more consistently, higher protein, all of those things are going to help to keep the biological component at bay. As I said, with type 1, there's still an emotional component, which that requires kind of counseling and working with somebody to kind of understand, well, why do I go to food? Why do I self-soothe? It's usually a learned pattern and behavior and stuff, but eating more consistently, getting your nutrition on point, both can, or that can definitely help both kinds of situations for you. So yeah, hope that helps. Kind of elaborated a little bit more so on that. Cindy Evans on YouTube. So thank you. I already take beta blockers. Will that help abate any side effects like that? So beta blockers, for anybody that doesn't know, basically are drugs that help to slow down your heart rate and your cardiac output. And so if you're worried about arrhythmias or cardiac issues with like a GLP-1 medication such as Ozempic or Wegovy or whatever, it's tough to say if the beta blocker will abate or stop it altogether, because even the beta blockers, people can still be on those drugs and still experience arrhythmia. So it depends on the individual, what kind of arrhythmia we're kind of dealing with, what kind of cardiac issues. In theory, I mean, it should, and it may just keep your heart rate at more regular pace, but there's never any kind of guarantee in that respect of it. So yeah, hopefully that kind of helps. Noreen, hello from Alberta. Hello. Ria, I just joined. What drug? Ozempic. So Ozempic, we're talking Ozempic, we're talking Wegovy, we're talking tirzepatide, Mounjaro, all of the GLP-1 receptor agonists. Anti-vegan, nice hair, man. You should get a mohawk. Thank you, Ria. So Ria's asking, does Ozempic cause kidney issues or damage for those using it for weight loss? No. So yeah, short answer, there is no evidence to say that the GLP-1 medications like Ozempic cause any kind of kidney issues or damage. Yeah, that we're aware of. If anything, there's some evidence to show that they might actually help protect the kidneys, but it's not super strong evidence, but yeah, it's more likely they are providing benefit to the kidneys versus damage by any means. So, and then Cindy on YouTube, I think I've experienced both type 1 and type 2 binge, but I don't do either, but once in a while. I need to get better at dealing with both of them. So fair enough, Cindy. And yeah, some people might have kind of a mixture of the two, or it's usually one or the other. And then, yeah, like I said, working on the dietary patterns and trying to eat more consistently and get more protein in and stuff like that through the day and get more of your calories earlier in the day can greatly help binging, whether it's type 1 or type 2 kind of binging, if you will, and ultimately just help with better management of cravings later in the day and later night snacking and stuff. Natasha on TikTok, have you ever heard of OptiFast? Yes, so I've heard of OptiFast. I've had a few patients that have been on OptiFast. Generally, it's done as a pre-weight loss surgery kind of protocol. It kind of reminds me of like I guess it's related to like Slim Fast, which was really big in the 90s and kind of early 2000s. Same kind of idea. It's basically shakes, liquid calories, ultra low calories, basically get you to drop as much weight as quickly as possible. It has to be clinician supervised because we can get electrolyte abnormalities and that sort of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it as kind of like if you're not going for weight loss surgery, because it is quite restrictive and most people are ultimately going to gain the weight back once they come off of it. So unless you're doing it for, say, pre-weight loss surgery or something, yeah, generally not something that I would look at. So Capenda, I was on 0.75 of Trulicity about a year, and my A1C started to creep up. So my doctor started me on Ozempic. Lucky I have no side effects, smooth transition from Trulicity to Ozempic. Awesome. Yeah. So Ozempic, if we look at kind of like the potency of these drugs, I guess, Trulicity would be less potent than Ozempic. Ozempic and Wegovy are the same medication. They both have semaglutide, just Wegovy is for obesity and Ozempic's for diabetes. But Ozempic is definitely more potent than Trulicity. And then Mounjaro so far is showing to be more potent than Ozempic and Wegovy. So it's kind of the next guy, and we're ultimately going to see more and more agents coming to market that are increasingly more effective in terms of managing blood sugars and all those sorts of things. So on YouTube, what does Julie mean? No wonder it doesn't work because it's compounded. What does that mean? Oh, I see. Sorry. Thanks. You just answered my question. Sweet. Glad I answered it. Yeah, I think you kind of got the right idea that because it was compounded and not the actual full-on drug, yeah, it wasn't providing the benefit in terms of weight management for them. Lisa, Saxenda versus Contrave. Does one have more success? Great question. So Saxenda, if we look at just like on a study per study basis, I would say Saxenda for more people is more potent than Contrave. And what I kind of mean by that is that, yeah, Saxenda could led to more people reaching about 10% weight loss on average. Excuse me. Whereas Contrave would lead to a majority of people reaching about 5 to 8% weight loss. So just based on that, and if we just looked at one study and compared it to another, but they weren't actually head-to-head in the same kind of procedures, Contrave looks to be less effective than Saxenda. However, in saying all of that, I find it really depends kind of in the patient population, like in real life, if you will. For some people, Saxenda works like a hot damn and they lose more than that 10%. Most people, I would say, pretty easily reach 5% weight loss for sure. And then I have other people with Contrave who they're on Contrave. Contrave provides zero benefit whatsoever. And then other people where it's like a miracle drug. And like I had a patient that I saw today, I think they've dropped like 150 pounds or something like that on Contrave. And it's just worked beautifully for them. And what about them makes Contrave better? I don't really have a good answer. I tend to find if there's like an underlying depression or ADD or anxiety or something like that, Contrave might be the better option because it does have bupropion, which has evidence for treating ADHD, depression, anxiety, and that sort of thing. So that might certainly be, a better option for that kind of group. But again, there's really no concrete evidence to say. I've just found in practice that, yeah, some people it works extremely well and other people not so much. Same thing can be said for Saxenda, Ozempic, and that sort of thing. It really varies person to person and kind of where they're at in their journey and what kind of abnormalities they might have or irregularities they might have in terms of their physiology and stuff like that. So Sharia on TikTok, what are my thoughts about getting a B12 injection while on Mounjaro or Wegovy? I mean, if you want to make some expensive urine, fly at her. Unless you have like a vitamin B12 deficiency or you've been, advised by a doctor to get B12 injections, they're really not going to provide any kind of benefit. B12 for some people say, well, you need it for energy and that sort of thing. The reason why we say you need it for energy is because some people could have a B12 deficiency, which ultimately leads to anemia, which is a decrease in the oxygen carrying capacity of your blood. So if you have this anemia, Yeah, B12 is going to be beneficial, or if it's due to the B12, B12 will definitely be beneficial because it'll increase that oxygen capacity. You'll have more energy and that sort of thing. But unless you have that issue or problem, you're just going to get an injection and you're just going to pee it out for the most part. So really no overall benefit or anything like that. So yeah. Over to the YouTube. Cindy, thank you for doing this live chat. This has been very informative. One more question. Is there any best time of the week to start Ozempic? I was planning to start Friday. So good question. When should you start your dosing of Ozempic? What I can tell you is that generally the side effects after a dose are going to peak within 2 to 3 days for the most part. Some people, it might be the first day, but most people, 2 to 3 days, that's when the drug is peaking in your system, and then it starts to fall over the rest of the week until your next injection. So, looking at that perspective, Friday wouldn't be a terrible time. Thursday night might not be a bad idea either. Friday you should be okay, but yeah, certainly over the weekend you might get more of the side effects and they might peak, and you can kind of know what to expect, and you could always change your day if you need to. But also if you're worried about missing work or something like that, yeah, dosing it Friday or Thursday. Hopefully the side effects would peak over the weekend, and then you wouldn't have to like miss work or anything in that respect. So that would be kind of the time there if you're worried about side effects. But other than that, if you're tolerating it well and you're not having any problems, yeah, it's going to be whichever day of the week is going to work best for you so that you can remember to take it consistently, because you're going to get more side effects if you say miss a dose or something in that sense. You're going to get more variability in terms of the blood concentration levels, and that could potentially lead to some concerns and issues. So yeah, hopefully that helps there. And then on YouTube, what do I think of 16 and 8 intermittent fasting to start eating at about 11 and Saxenda? So let me answer the first question. So what do I think about intermittent fasting, 16 and 8, whatever kind of floats your boat? I'm honestly not a big fan of intermittent fasting. 99.9% of people can't sustain it. It really provides no extra benefit or anything like that. And it's just kind of a glorified way of just saying, I'm skipping breakfast, right? So no real benefits to it. Like I said, with the binging aspect of things, I do find that more people, when they restrict in the morning and tend to have more calories later in the day, that leads to more binging type behaviors and more binging like aspects and cravings of things. So I'm always a big advocate of get your calories in earlier in the day. You've slept for hopefully 8 hours overnight. That's more than enough time to fast. And your body is wanting nutrients at that point. Plus, the other big reason I don't like fasting is our bodies need continuous pulses of protein throughout the day in order to maintain our lean muscle tissue. And there's some evidence to show that intermittent fasting actually can lead to a greater loss of lean muscle tissue in terms when you're losing weight compared to just a standard calorie deficit. If you lose more lean muscle tissue, what that means is your metabolic rate goes down further, and the scale might look the same, but you've lost more lean muscle. And so what's ultimately happened is you've lost more lean muscle and you've lost less fat. Losing fat is what we all want to lose. So I generally don't recommend intermittent fasting. However, on the flip side, if you are keen and it works for you, I always recommend actually doing the opposite of what everyone else does. So again, loading more of your calories earlier in the day, starting at 8 a.m. or whatever time you wake up. Eat for an 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour window. Really doesn't matter too much. We're kind of splitting hairs at that point in terms of what's going to be beneficial or whatever. And you also got to keep in mind real life and, spending time with family and having dinner and stuff. But having more food earlier in the day, eat through the course of the day, and then stopping at 6 p.m. or something like that is ultimately a better option. It helps prevent and mitigate the binging and aspects, things of that. As well, when we wake up in the morning, our bodies are better equipped first thing or earlier in the day to manage the nutrients and calories that we're putting in. And so it can better handle glucose, it can better handle cholesterol and that sort of thing. So we see less excursions or less peaks in your blood sugar levels. We see less peaks in your cholesterol level when you eat earlier in the day versus when you have like an exact same meal at dinner time, for example. What we see at dinner time is your blood sugar goes up higher, your cholesterol levels go up higher. Now, we don't have the evidence to say, what exactly that means. But if you're doing that consistently and you're having greater peaks and stuff like that later in the day, likely there's a chance that could lead to worse cardiovascular heart disease outcomes and stuff like that down the road. A great example or an extreme example is looking at people who do night shift or work night shifts and shift works and stuff. They have significantly increased risk of like heart disease, strokes, heart attacks, that sort of thing, because they tend to be eating overnight when the body really isn't very good at processing nutrients and stuff. And so that may be part of the reason why that is. So if you're going to do it, I definitely recommend doing it earlier in the day and then fasting the evening and overnight and stuff. And generally success is better. So hope that helps. Sherry, it's me, I'm 2. Yeah, a lot of people are relating to the binge eating aspect. Cheryl, you were so kind to explain this all to us. My pleasure, Cheryl. It's what I do. I love doing it. So on TikTok, I heard Ozempic Wegovy performed better than Mounjaro for weight loss in recent studies. I mean, I haven't come across a study that has shown that. Every study that I've seen thus far has shown that Mounjaro has performed substantially better. I mean, if you have the link to the study or what have you, feel free to send it to me and I can definitely take a look. We'd love to see if that is the case. I'm a little bit behind on the literature because I just opened a pharmacy here in Calgary, and so been a tad bit busy with that. But yeah, would love to read it. As far as I know, I haven't seen anything in that regard, but who knows? Cindy should clarify, would it be better to start on a day that you aren't working the next day to be free from stress in case of side effects? Yeah, so to kind of build on Cindy's question, was asking about would it be better to start Ozempic or one of the GLP-1 medications on a day like when you don't have to work the next day to potentially mitigate side effects? And you certainly could, especially when you're first starting it out, if you're concerned about it or if you're more sensitive to medications and stuff like that. Again, it's going to vary person to person. You might not notice anything that one day, and then the next day it hits like a ton of bricks. And if you didn't take that day off, then suddenly you're kind of shit's creek without a paddle kind of thing, which could quite possibly be literal shit. So just keeping that in mind. So it's really, really tough to say. But yeah, you're going to have to play it by ear. If you have a couple of days, probably going to be your best bet to kind of hedge your bets a little bit, if you will. Jenny of Coldstone, I like to take it Thursday night so it's stronger over the weekend when I'm more likely to binge eat. Yeah, that could certainly be kind of an aspect there, if you will. Most people tend to binge over the weekend, mostly because, yeah, they tend to be too restrictive during the week. So that would be another thing that I'd be looking at, is just how much of a calorie deficit you're creating during the week and making sure you're properly nourishing your body a bit better and creating maybe a more mild calorie deficit in order to mitigate binging and stuff like that on the weekends or evenings and such. Jasmine, do you recommend berberine? Overall, no. So berberine, I mean, it's kind of like a lot of people are jumping all over it because they say it manages blood sugars and stuff, which it's true. There's some evidence that shows berberine seemed to help with blood sugar management and stuff, but it doesn't look like it's any better than, it overall hasn't been shown to perform better than like metformin. Generally when you go to buy it off the shelf in the bottle or whatever like that, there's a lot of questionability about the actual concentration in each capsule. There's been lots of studies that have been done that have gone capsule to capsule, and what's been shown is that there's different concentrations from capsule to capsule, so you're getting variable doses through the day, so that kind of negates any potential benefit. There's even been some studies that have shown, one capsule has a lot and one capsule has none. So now you're just getting this wacky up and down aspect because of a lack of standardization, because it's a natural health product. So overall, no, I don't recommend it. I look to kind of the better evidence-based products and drugs and stuff like that. And berberine just doesn't have enough at this present time. Ellie, hello, Dr. Dan. Hello. Natasha, after the 12-week mark, they transition us back to food and help us plan meals, etc. Yeah, so Natasha was asking about OptiFast, and that's generally, kind of what they might do. They might do kind of like a OptiFast for 12 weeks. Hopefully they do it properly in terms of the transition back over. I know it can be super challenging because you're super restricted and stuff like that. And yeah, I still see a lot of people come to me after they've gained the weight back and then some, where they then tried another diet. And yeah, it all has to be looked at properly and with proper planning and stuff like that in place to help you to be successful in the long term. Z on YouTube. Is there a connection between semaglutide and gallbladder issues, so stones, removal, etc.? If so, would it be beneficial to take some kind of bile salts ahead of time to help prevent those types of issues? So the GLP-1 receptor agonists have been linked to causing gallstones, which in some cases could lead to your gallbladder needing to be removed. It's not that it's the GLP-1 medications directly causing the gallstones for the most part. Well, it could be kind of contributing somewhat, but mostly what we're seeing is that the gallstones issues with the GLP-1 medications is more from losing weight very rapidly. So our fat cells contain a lot of cholesterol, and cholesterol goes out in our bile. When we get too much cholesterol in our bile and it gets too concentrated, it can then form stones. And so if you lose a lot of weight rapidly, you're going to get a large dump of cholesterol. That cholesterol is going to enter the blood, it's going to get filtered by the liver and sent out into the bile, into the gallbladder, and it may sit in the gallbladder, lead to a stone forming. And that's ultimately why. So the GLP-1 helps with rapid weight loss because it reduces your appetite, cravings, and all that sort of thing. So it can lead to that large dump of cholesterol, which then leads to the development of stones. There's also what we know is that the GLP-1 medications do have an effect in the sphincter at the gallbladder itself. So sometimes they might not open up as much or allow as much bile to leave the gallbladder. So bile could get more concentrated in the gallbladder because of the GLP-1 medications. And so that aspect may ultimately contribute to the formation of the gallstones and lead to the development of the gallstones, and in worst case, possibly needing gallbladder removal. Taking bile salts and stuff like that, not really, because bile salts work in the GI tract. So the bile has to have already been released from the gallbladder and in the GI tract, and then the bile salts will act and have an effect in terms of mitigating that and stuff like that. It doesn't act at the gallbladder itself where the main issue is, and it doesn't affect the release or anything like that of bile from the gallbladder. So overall, bile salts really wouldn't provide any kind of benefit or anything like that in that respect. So the one way that we kind of look at it is just trying not to lose weight too rapidly if you can. I mean, it's going to vary person to person and stuff, but slow and steady weight loss may mitigate that. So there isn't as much cholesterol being dumped. But even then, I've had some patients who have lost weight more slowly and they've still developed gallstone issues, whether they already had the gallstones and then like a little bit extra cholesterol then tipped them over the edge and they got full on further gallstone problems. It's really impossible and tough to say, but yeah, continued monitoring and following up, and kind of taken from there. So Ria on the Tickety Talk, is there a cutoff percentage you can lose on Ozempic at 1 milligrams? Is 100 pounds realistic? So it's going to vary person to person. Average weight loss was 15% from baseline. So if, just for the simplicity of math, and I'm tired, if you were starting at 100 pounds, and the average person with the 2.4 milligrams of Wegovy lost 15% from baseline, so they would lose on average 15 pounds if they were a 100-pound individual. So whatever your baseline weight is, you start the drug, 15% is probably on average. Now, that was perfect trial conditions. That wasn't real life or anything like that. And it might be less. So it might only be 10%, which is 10 pounds. It might only be 5 pounds. So it all depends on your life circumstances and stuff. The more weight you have to lose, like if you're 400 plus, yeah, the more weight you're likely going to lose. And certainly 100 pounds might be in that realm for you. But if you're like, 200 pounds right now, losing 100 pounds, probably very, very unlikely, right? So yeah, it really varies person to person. It also depends how dedicated and consistent you are. For every pound that you lose, the closer and closer attention you're going to have to pay to your overall calorie intake. So calorie counting, optimizing your protein intake, optimizing your activity, and so on and so forth. So they're not magic. It really comes down to the individual and where you're kind of starting from. So Jude, see, that's what I was going to ask. Fior, can we get Wegovy in Alberta as yet? So not as of yet that I'm aware of. It was supposed to be available in March, and then that didn't come through. My drug rep friends have no updates. They've been, I think, avoiding the topic altogether because they have no idea themselves. So we can't get Wegovy here in Alberta yet. Wegovy has been approved in Canada and everything like that. I suspect it's going to probably roll out September-ish or something like that. They're probably not going to roll it during the summer because it's going to be just harder uptake. Physicians are going on vacation. Pharmacies are kind of, intermittent in terms of staffing, all those sorts of things. So it's probably going to be better rollout for them, I would think, in September. What I can say is that possibly Mounjaro is the other big guy, or tirzepatide. That one's probably going to come out again, fall of 2023 here in Canada. It's been approved for diabetes. Probably by the time it comes out in the fall, it's probably going to be approved for obesity. So yeah, that one I have a bit better confidence around. But yeah, as for Wegovy, your guess is as good as mine at this point. Back to TikTok. I used Semaglutide for 2 months and gained weight. I'm so confused. So if you gained weight, you were in a calorie surplus. So my biggest questions are, were you calorie counting? Were you doing your activity? Were you doing all the things that you ultimately need to do with managing these drugs? A lot of people sometimes get caught up a bit in the mentality of like, I can go on this drug and I can eat whatever I want. And the drug will just do its thing. The drugs aren't magic. They're just tools. They help us to reduce our appetite so that we can be more mindful about the choices and foods that we're eating and stuff. And so, yeah, if you want to lose weight, you still need to be in a calorie deficit. And if you're not achieving that calorie deficit and if your calories going in are greater than your calories out, then you're going to gain weight. But in order to, you have to get your calories less than the calories that you're burning, and then you'll lose weight. So back to the YouTube. Jenny of Coldstone is asking, have you seen people have much success with quizmia, or the phentermine and topiramate combination drug? So I haven't had like any clinical experience with phentermine or topiramate, the combo drug, because we don't have it here up in Canada, and I don't think we ever will get it here in Canada. So, I mean, I've certainly anecdotally seen kind of the stories and stuff like that, and I've had some clients that I work with out of the States who have been on it previously and they had success with it, but it tends to be more of a short-term agent just because of the phentermine component, as well. The topiramate can have some gnarly side effects in terms of cognitive effects and stuff. So people don't tend to be on it long-term. But yeah, people have had success for it. Keeping the weight off is then the big question for it. So Cindy, will you post this video when you're finished? I missed the first part. Yes, so anybody that wants any of my lives that I've ever done, I have them all on my YouTube channel at the official Dr. Dan. You can go check them out there. They automatically get uploaded after this. They're all being recorded and put on YouTube and stuff. So they will all be posted, and you definitely can go and check out all my previous lives and all the other wonderful videos that I've put out. So definitely go and check it out. Back to the tickety talk. Ria, I missed my Ozempic for 2 weeks, so just stopped, been a month. Can I restart at 1 milligram or the bottom, or back down to 0.25? So the way, if you miss a dose of your Ozempic, so if you miss a dose of a once weekly injection drug, you have a 5-day window. So if your dosing was, say, Monday and you missed your dose, Wednesday, you're still within that 5-day window of missing your dose, so you can take your regular dose. If it's Friday, you're technically still 5 days, so you could take your regular dose on that Friday, and then Friday would likely become your dosing day. If it's now Saturday, unfortunately, more of the drug would have cleared your system at that point. And so if you were on 1 milligram, it'd be recommended you drop to 0.5 milligrams. If it goes another 5 days, so it's 10 days total, and you're, say, 11 days out from your dose that you missed, then you would need to go down to the next dosing interval, which would be 0.25, and so on. So if it's more than 5 days, if you're greater than 5 days, you go back to your previous. If it's within 5 days, you can stay at your regular one. And then the further out you get, you just have to bring it back down. So for your case, if you're 2 weeks, you're 14 days out, yeah, you would have to start at 0.25 milligrams again, in order to avoid any kind of side effects. So move it up from there. Back to the tickety talk, or to the YouTube, sorry. Thank you so much. I really love listening to you and all of your videos. You're so very knowledgeable, and I very much appreciate your help. Well, thank you very much. That means a lot. Yeah, pretty cool that, you know, this video and content can have a pretty profound effect for people. So I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, if you guys leave comments or want to go to my webpage, healthyvolve.co, and leave a Google review, that would be super, super awesome. I would love all the support. If you want to go to my pharmacy page, apothecarerx.ca, and leave a review there too. We're brand new, even though you didn't technically see me at the pharmacy, but yeah, any support and help is always appreciated. So, and what is the success rate? And what is the success rate of Saxenda, and how long can you stay on it? So to answer your first question, or your second question, you can stay on these GLP-1 medications for life. In fact, it's recommended that most people do. So definitely, yeah, recommend that you do hang out and you stay on it for life, just because a majority of people tend to regain the weight after they come off the medication. And the success rate with Saxenda, again, it varies person to person, but Saxenda was averaging about 10% weight loss from baseline. So back to that 100-pound person, if they were 100 pounds and they lost 10% of their baseline, they would then have lost 10 pounds or be at 90 pounds. So yeah, so whatever yours is, figure out what 10% is, or where your starting your weight is, and you go from there. So Ria, fasting leads to cellular regeneration, autophagy, decreased inflammation, and insulin resistance. So your body, I mean, okay. The claims with regards to fasting and cellular regeneration and autophagy, your body naturally already does that. We have a couple of studies in mice that show it might increase it, and there's maybe a signal that indicates autophagy is increasing, but in human studies that hasn't been teased out. And overall, any kind of calorie deficit that leads to weight loss ultimately leads to a decrease in inflammation and insulin resistance. So if we took first people intermittent fasting, we put people on just a standard calorie deficit diet, and they were in the same level of calorie intake per day, they both lose exactly the same amount of weight, whether they're intermittent fasting or just in a standard calorie deficit, because their calorie deficit is exactly the same. They both had exactly the same amount of decrease in inflammation, decrease in insulin resistance, and also the calorie deficit group in mice and stuff like that have also been shown to increase their autophagy and cellular regeneration. So the benefits of fasting and stuff like that in that regard have all been way, way overhyped. There's nothing special about it. And you're not getting any extra benefit short of what you would achieve with just a standard calorie deficit. So yeah, I mean, if you want to use fasting, again, nothing wrong with it. Try and do it earlier in the day in terms of eating more of your food earlier in the day. But the extra benefits that other people are kind of touting and saying that you're going to get, yeah, is a load of bull for the most part. So. Lainey on the YouTube, if you're overweight by 20 pounds and not quite obese, which one will you recommend? Yeah, it's impossible for me to say based on just your number where you're at. The guidelines and stuff like that would say that we would focus on lifestyle modification as being the main focus. If you're looking for to start a medication and stuff, you know, if you have a BMI that's greater than 27, so you're in the overweight category, but you have hypertension or diabetes or something, then we might look at an agent of some kind to start. But again, it would depend on the individual that's sitting in front of me and doing a more proper assessment, because we don't just throw a drug at somebody and hope for the best. We kind of assess and figure out which one is the ideal and bestest option to get the most effective results long term. So varies person to person and stuff. Paige, I'm taking metformin with Mounjaro. Great results. Does it matter what time I take my metformin, in the AM or the PM? For the most part, it doesn't. Yeah, your metformin, you can really take that one any time of the day that ultimately works for you if you're only taking it once a day. So if you're taking it once a day, it's going to be whatever works for you. I generally recommend whatever is your biggest meal of the day to take it with that one. That can help to mitigate any potential GI side effects you might experience with the metformin. So yeah, that would be kind of that one that I would look at in that regard. True North, can I take more than 2 milligrams of Ozempic? Will insurance cover it? So if you're on Ozempic, Ozempic is technically approved for 2 milligrams once per week in managing diabetes and stuff like that. Canada, unfortunately, we don't have the 2 milligram pen, but could you, in theory, take more, and would your insurance cover it? I have found it really varies insurance company to insurance company. Some do, some don't. I had one today where they had a hard cap that they would only cover Ozempic up to 1 milligram once per week. They would not cover anything above that. So if my patient wants to take more than 1 milligrams once per week of Ozempic, they would have to pay out of pocket for the other pen. So yeah, it really varies insurance plan to insurance plan. Ellie, does metformin help with weight loss? So like very, very little does it help with. Yeah, for most people, it has a pretty mild benefit. It does have some evidence to show it can reduce your appetite via the GDF-15 hormone in the body, which is an appetite regulatory hormone and stuff. So some people do get that appetite reduction and they might get some weight loss, but it's not something that I would prescribe actively. It's not something I actively prescribe on a daily basis to help with weight loss. I would use it first to help control blood sugar levels. And if we happen to get a benefit of weight loss with it, cool. If we don't, all right. So yeah, that would be kind of that aspect there. Natasha talking about the OptiFast again. I believe it's removing a shake at a time until it's slowly fully replaced with 1,200 calories. So I really hope that they're putting you on a higher amount than 1,200 calories a day, because I have yet to meet an individual who can actually sustain 1,200 calories a day. Actually, that's not true. There's one person that I have had as a patient, but they were like 5 foot and they were like 100 and well, actually they were like 95 pounds at the end of it, and that was their maintenance level of calories, and it worked just fine for them. But for 99.9% of people, 1,200 calories a day is going to end up in disaster every single time. So Ari on the YouTube, is compounded semaglutide ineffective? I probably missed that point. Yeah, just to give a brief overview. So yeah, if you want to see this video again or get more details that you missed or rewatch it or whatever, it's all up on my YouTube at the official Dr. Dan. You can go and check it out and be sure to subscribe while you're there. And as for compounded semaglutide, yeah, I mean, there's been lots of people who have reported that it helps with their weight loss and stuff like that, but we have no idea how much it helps. The salt is semaglutide or liraglutide or tirzepatide, the molecule, but it's a different salt that's attached. So we have no idea how it acts in the body, how potent it is, and those sorts of things. So it might be effective, but it might not be. And I would wager more on the might not be than anything else. But we have no freaking data on it. So Lisa, do you think Contrave is an effective weight loss medication if you can't tolerate GLP-1 receptor agonists? Yeah, absolutely, Lisa. Contrave can be effective. I kind of talked about it earlier that, yeah, some people it works really, really well. But yeah, it certainly could be an option to try if you weren't able to tolerate, Ozempic, Saxenda, and what have you. Ellie, is rapid weight loss bad if you have no gallbladder? Not necessarily, or really at all. So if you don't have a gallbladder, really one of the only things that you need to be concerned about is maybe your fat consumption. But even then, your body is still able to produce bile. It just doesn't store the bile or anything. So you might have some problems digesting fat. But if you're rapidly losing weight, there's no issues or concerns that we're really aware of, unless you have, like you had your gallbladder where it was removed, but then maybe somewhere along that path, there was like maybe a hidden stone that's developed, like kind of like an outpouching on the piping and stuff. Maybe that could lead to some issues. Worst case scenario, a gallstone could get trapped and moving my camera, get trapped and like really piss off your pancreas. And then that could cause pancreatitis. But that could happen whether you have a gallbladder or not. But for the most part, yeah, if you have no gallbladder, would be no issue, no problem. So Jay Allen, any idea when Mounjaro will be available in Canada? Probably fall of 2023 is currently what I'm hearing. So stay tuned. What's the link to the pharmacy? I will leave a review. So the pharmacy name is Apothecare Pharmacy. The website is apothecarerx.ca here in Calgary, Alberta. So go and check her out. I will be firing up a obesity clinic out of there. I'll be overseeing it and stuff like that. And we'll be taking patients and helping people manage weight or get drug coverage or everything in between, just supporting their weight management journey and stuff like that. So you can give the pharmacy a call and can book in with myself or one of my colleagues and can potentially see if you are fit or what have you. On the YouTube, or not the YouTube, man, I'm getting confused tonight. The TikTok, I ate a whole pizza for supper. It was delicious. I regret this. Motivation to go for a walk. I mean, you should go for a walk because walking is good for you. If you ate a whole pizza and it was delicious, then relish in that, enjoy the fucking pizza, and move on. Your next meal, your next choice, your next step can be a healthier one, and it is what it is. So you did it. Okay. Yeah, just kind of take it as it is. If you were craving it and wanting it, awesome. You know, it's kind of your body's indication that you needed to eat some food and stuff. So leave it at that and go for a walk because it's good for you, not because you want to burn off the pizza or anything. On the TikTok, what doctor would I need to go to get Mounjaro? So the doctor to get Mounjaro, really, it could be your family doctor. It might be an endocrinologist. It might be an obesity specialist. Yeah, it all kind of depends. Sunny, I'm only halfway through my journey. I'm over 60 and yo-yoed all my life. Will it be just as effective as someone younger? Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so there's a common misconception that as we get older, it gets harder to lose weight. And in some cases, like it really depends. For the most part, your metabolism doesn't really go down, but it depends on like what kind of habits you develop later in life, right? It also depends how active you've been up to that point. So as we age, we do lose muscle mass, and that can certainly play a role, obviously, in our metabolic rate. And so if you've lost a significant amount of muscle mass in your older age, then yeah, losing weight is probably going to be more challenging than when you were younger and stuff. Either way, you're going to need to be in a calorie deficit to ultimately lose weight with or without medications and stuff, and to help build the muscle mass, resistance training, and all those sorts of things. Hugely beneficial in helping you to continue being successful and stuff. So yeah, and your journey is your own. Definitely don't compare it to your younger self or anything like that. Just do it for you. That's all that matters. Sherry, 100% knowledgeable. Thank you, Sherry. Karen, as someone on Saxenda, I've lost 25 pounds in 2 months, not quite 10%. I hope it continues. Awesome. Keep it up. User 9114. Do you know when Mounjaro will be available in Canada? Sometime fall 2023. That girl 68 is asking, can you take metformin and Wegovy? Yeah, you definitely can. I often use metformin and Ozempic all the time. Ozempic is Wegovy, just at a lower dose and approved for diabetes. So yeah, the combination of the two get used all the time. I wouldn't necessarily be using metformin to help with weight loss. I'd be using metformin to manage your blood sugars. Maybe it would give us the kick of potentially some weight loss, or at least helping the process, but I wouldn't be hanging my hat on that. This is going to be, the Wegovy's not working, metformin will be the thing that jumpstarts it for you, kind of thing. User 9114, what is the max dose of Ozempic? Like, can you take more than 2 milligrams? So yeah, I mean, like I said, Ozempic and Wegovy both have semaglutide in them. So Wegovy is used up to a dose of 2.4 milligrams once per week. Ozempic, the max dose for diabetes that it's approved for is 2 milligrams once per week. But if you don't have access to Wegovy or whatever, you in theory could take more of the Ozempic. You would just be doing 2 to 3 shots, or 2 to 3 shots, depending on which pens you have available and stuff, in order to reach a higher amount and such like that. So that girl 68, I'm insulin resistant, overweight, and on metformin, but can I be on one of these other weight loss? Yeah, you certainly could be. Yeah, I prescribe it for people every day, all the time. Jackie, I'm down 32 pounds on Saxenda. Awesome. Wonderfully complicated. Can you get Mounjaro if you are insulin resistant, but your A1C is not high? It all really depends. Like, I mean, technically, yeah, you could easily be prescribed Mounjaro off label, but you'd have to pay out of pocket. So it's not so much that you couldn't get the prescription. It's going to be a matter of whether your insurance will cover it or pay for it, essentially, because most insurances, like since Mounjaro is approved for diabetes, I'm pretty sure it actually just got approved for obesity in the States. I just need to double check that and make a video, obviously. But if you have obesity and you don't have diabetes and it's approved for obesity, then your insurance would hopefully cover it for you. If you have diabetes, then they definitely would cover it for you, but they're probably going to have you need to be on metformin and maybe another agent before you can get to, say, Mounjaro. Sue, what do you think about berberine? Nothing special. I don't recommend it. The data is too sparse. I actually have a video on my page you can go check out. So yeah, berberine I don't recommend it. Andrea, does insurance in Canada cover Mounjaro? So we don't know yet because Mounjaro is technically not available for sale yet in Canada. It is approved. I'm assuming they're going to. It's just a matter of the drug coming to market. So, Lisa, what are your thoughts on Contrave? Yeah, Contrave is a good drug. Kind of already answered it and stuff like that. So yeah, good drug. It's effective, kind of does what it needs to do. Wonderfully complicated. Please answer my question. I answer everybody's question. It just takes me some time to get to it. So patience is appreciated because we've had a ton of them tonight. So C-Trav, is it normal for triglycerides to rise with weight loss and low carb using Ozempic and Vyvanse? So triglycerides tend to actually go down with Ozempic. Vyvanse doesn't have any effect on lipids or anything like that. So with Ozempic, there's actually evidence to show that lipids tend to go down. So cholesterol, triglycerides and stuff when you're on it. The low carb, if you're on a high saturated fat diet, which a lot of people on low carb tend to do, yeah, that definitely can make your triglycerides and LDL go up. Definitely recommend you be looking at that because LDL and triglycerides are very much known to cause heart disease, so heart attacks and strokes. They clog up our arteries, and the higher they are for a greater amount of time over the course of our lives means bad news bears at the end of the day. So saturated fats are going to be things like red meats, bacons, any fats that are solid at room temperature have high amounts of saturated fat. So looking at polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, basically a Mediterranean diet, lots of fish, nuts, olive oils, liquid oils, and stuff like that, all much, much healthier options. So Charity, 50 pounds, weight loss, 23% in 9 months on Saxenda. Wicked. Way to go, Charity. So there's Charity. She's an example of someone who lost more than the 10% that is on average seen. So it is definitely possible. It depends on how much you have to lose, how consistent you are, how close of attention you're paying, and that sort of thing. Sako on TikTok, are you currently accepting patients in Calgary? I sure am. Our obesity clinic is, well, it's essentially up and running now. I mean, we just opened the pharmacy clinic. Today was day 8. Yeah, day 8. We've been open for 8 days. So opened it up last Monday. Yeah, I'm taking patients here in Calgary. Well, our team is, I guess you could say. Like I said, I'm overseeing the weight loss, weight management program. So you for sure can look up the pharmacy, Apothecare Pharmacy in Calgary. Give us a call and we can get you booked in and see if you're a candidate and all that stuff. Andrea, I lost 60 pounds on Ozempic 2 years ago, then went off it and put back on 40 without really trying. Yeah, so it really depends on, I mean, you obviously need to kind of pay attention to, when you come off of it. I don't recommend coming off of it. B, yeah, you need to pay attention to the dietary patterns, activity levels, and all that kind of stuff, because if we didn't make any substantial changes lifestyle wise when we were on the drug, we tend to go back to kind of our old patterns and no longer have that appetite suppression aspect. Excuse me. And then that ultimately can lead to weight regain. So CTRAV, yeah, same questions. We answered that one. Charity, awesome. Donna, I took Ozempic for 4.5 months and never experienced any weight loss. So yeah, as we kind of already reviewed, if you didn't experience weight loss, you weren't in a calorie deficit. So my first question would be tracking and how consistent you were with that tracking. Were you measuring your portions? All those sorts of things. And if you weren't tracking or anything, that would be your first thing to go back to and to look at. Unfortunately, when it comes to managing our weight, and if you struggle with your weight, you're going to have to pay attention to your caloric intake in some form or fashion. We unfortunately don't get the existence that skinny people do, where they don't have to try and they can just keep the weight off or keep their weight the same. If you struggle with your weight and obesity, you ultimately need to pay closer attention, especially in what's considered an obesogenic environment that we live in. And yeah, just monitoring your calories, your liquid calories, food calories, all those sorts of things. So very, very important to do that. Sweet. That was a ton of questions. Thanks for all the support, you beautiful people, and all the really fantastic questions. We've gone a little bit late. Like I said, if you want to see this full video, it is going to be up on the YouTube here shortly. So you can definitely go check it out. Check out my other channels at the official Dr. Dan. And our next live will be at the beginning of June coming up here. We'll do monthly for the summer months. So I hope everybody gets out and enjoys the beautiful weather and don't get too smoked out or anything like that. And yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic evening. And of course, ask me questions on here. I've been really crappy about answering those said questions because I've been so busy as of late, but I'm trying to get caught up, and yeah, we'll do what we can and stuff. So I will chat with you peeps later. Have a good one, everybody.